How's it going, Knicks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Fireside Knicks. I am your host, Dylan Backer, and tonight the New York Knicks just won their third consecutive preseason game. They stay undefeated in the preseason, defeating the Minnesota Timberwolves by a score of 115 to 110. Now, it did not come without any drama. I think everyone by now saw it. Dante DiVincenzo, the guy that the Knicks just traded away in the Karl Anthony Towns trade, got into it a little bit with the Knicks bench in the first quarter, and then after the game, got into it more with assistant coach Rick Brunson. So those are the top storylines, of course, with this game. It didn't come without any drama whatsoever. And I'll get into, some takeaways about the game itself in a moment, but I just want to say, I'm not even surprised at all that these storylines have, come about. I think the timing of it is very interesting, though, because earlier in the day, Stefan Bondy of the New York Post came out with a report where DiVincenzo basically denied all those reports that said he was unhappy in New York after the Mikal Bridges trade. So I think the timing is pretty interesting there, and I did see some of the quotes that have come out from DiVincenzo after this game, and he did say that he was mostly just joking with Tom Thibodeau during the first quarter about when he was barking over the Knicks bench, He said he was just joking with Tibbs about, his effect of, kind of creating a little bit, I guess. I don't really know what that was really all about. It just looked kind of strange on television, on live especially. But after the game with Rick Brunson, that wasn't a joke. I don't really know much more about that other than they kind of went at it. I don't know who started that either. I noticed when I was watching the clips of them two going at it that DiVincenzo told Brunson that he was talking to Tibbs, so I'm guessing that they were alluding back to the first quarter incident where, everyone by now has seen him saying something to the bench, saying that this is what happens when you let me take control or something like that. So definitely some interesting stuff. I think that's kind of crazy that this is coming out in the preseason now, fresh off the trade, and it didn't happen like in a regular season meeting. This game had some playoff energy to it. It really did. When you combine that drama with DiVincenzo and, of course, the game itself, which I'm about to get into, this game did not feel like a preseason game at all. It really didn't. I mean, if you look back at these highlights of the game and you tell somebody that this game occurred in late March of the regular season, I think they'd believe you. I really do. I mean, this game had a lot of intensity to it. The stars showed out in this game, too. Anthony Edwards and Jalen Brunson were going at it, too. This was a really good game. Overall, this was, from a basketball standpoint, it wasn't the prettiest of games for the Knicks. They did come out on top, so that's of course always a plus. Again, it is just the preseason, so none of these games actually hold any sort of meaning whatsoever. But I do think this game we got a pretty good idea of what the rotation is going to look like at the start of the regular season, because for the most part, the starters played a lot of minutes, and a lot of the bench guys played. Not many of the third stringers played in this one. Like, Tyler Kolek did not see the floor at all. Jericho Sims only played 12 minutes and fouled out, which is kind of interesting. But a lot of the younger guys didn't see the floor a lot. I know Hukporti came in pretty late. He played like the last 5-7 minutes of the game. But other than that, it was mostly guys that you would expect to see in the rotation. So I'm just going to jump right into some takeaways from this game. So first things first, the Knicks shooting was not pretty. I mean, overall, they shot 42% from the floor and 30% from three, which is not exactly ideal. But they did hit 85% of their free throws, and that ended up being a massive difference. And that's something I want to talk about because, in the years past, free throw shooting has always been a killer for the Knicks, right? It's always been killer. And I think a part of that has to do with, the lack of front court spacing that they always had. Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein weren't the best free throw shooters. Obviously, Mitchell Robinson is still here, but we all know he is not a very good free throw shooter. In fact, he might even be one of the worst in the NBA. Now you have Karl Anthony Towns at center, a guy who can actually shoot his free throws. Now all five guys in the starting five can shoot free throws, which is always a good thing to have. Karl Anthony Towns hit 10 free throws in their first home game against Washington, and then Jalen Brunson in this one against Minnesota hit 11 free throws. So it's always good to see them actually knock down those free shots because they're free points. They're easy points. But the next thing I want to talk about, OG Anunoby. This guy, first two games of the preseason, he was pretty quiet offensively. He only had 9 points combined in the first two preseason games. He wasn't really involved offensively. Still was very impactful on the defensive end, don't get me wrong, but, offensively you would have liked to see a little bit more. Well, we saw a lot more of that tonight against Minnesota. He had 14 of his 19 points in the first quarter. He was really just lighting it up early. He went 3 of 8 from downtown, 6 of 13 from the field overall. Overall, I mean, he had a very good game offensively. Very good game. Yes, he was quiet a little bit after the first quarter, didn't do as much offensively, but the fact that he was able to start it off like that allowed for the rest of the guys to get going later on, and he was still able to have a really good impact on the defensive side. So it's always encouraging to see. the other guys not named Jalen Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns do something offensively. And OG Anunoby did that tonight. He had a good first quarter, and it really set the tone for the rest of the game. And Mikal Bridges as well. He was pretty quiet in the first half. He didn't do a whole lot. You didn't really see him get the ball a whole lot either. Third quarter, though, he really turned it up. Third quarter, he had a stretch where he scored like 10 straight points for the Knicks, and he finished overall at 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, went 6 of 11 from the floor. Overall, very solid game once again. This is a guy who's acclimating himself to the Knicks system still a little bit. He's still trying to figure out his role, kind of playing alongside 2 All-Stars once again. He's trying to kind of get that feel that he had with the Suns a little bit when he was playing alongside a pair of All-Stars in Chris Paul and Devin Booker. So he's kind of figuring it out a little bit, but once he really figures it out, he's going to be a weapon. A massive weapon for the Knicks, because this is a guy now who has plenty of experience as a number one option, being with the Brooklyn Nets. He was basically taking full control of that team. Now, once he really figures out his role with the Knicks, they're going to have a really good big three of Brunson, Bridges, and Towns. That's going to be a fun trio to watch. Other things I want to note from this game, too. Josh Hart, once again, 0 points. It is a little interesting to see that he's gone 3 straight games now scoreless. In fact, he's yet to score a single point in the preseason. He didn't even attempt a shot, for that matter, in 25 minutes, which is pretty, it's a little alarming. I'm not going to act like it's not. But at the same time, he was still making an impact everywhere else on the floor, which we were talking about the other day in a previous episode, where you do still need his impact on the rebounds, the assists, the playmaking, all that. And he did have 4 rebounds and 3 assists. I know it's not a lot, but it's still positive impact, because at the end of the day, he did finish with a plus-minus as +4. So he was still making a positive impact on the technicality side. Now, I do wish I would like to see him kind of be willing to take some more shots here and there. I don't think I would like to see 0 shots attempted every single night. That's not ideal, but overall, I do think that his impact is still very important to have in the starting 5, just for those other areas of the floor, the defense, of course, the rebounding and the playmaking, like I just alluded to. It's important stuff, and I know there's been a bit of a debate going on tonight about, I think Hart should be taken out of the starting 5, or this, that. I don't think Hart belongs in the starting 5. He's not willing to score enough to be in the starting 5. He doesn't make sense for it. I personally think he makes perfect sense for the starting 5, because you have 4 guys on the floor that are willing to put up a bunch of points, which we just saw tonight. We saw 4 guys score at least 15 points, out of the guys I just mentioned before. And the Hart, of course, yes, he put up an egg in points, but he was still impactful in other areas to where he can really make the offense as a whole flow. And that's what you want. That's what you ultimately want. Yes, I think a lot of us, including myself, would want to see Hart score some points. But I think overall we care about winning more than anything else. And if this kind of stuff, even if he's not putting up points, if his style of play is going to lead to winning, then I'm all for it. And I think Josh Hart's all for it too. I know he mentioned that not being able to score is going to be a little tough for him at times, which I think at any NBA player that'd be pretty tough for you if you're not going to be getting many scoring opportunities anymore. I think that's a pretty hard role to accept. So I commend Josh Hart for this, for really kind of embracing this new role he's going to have, where he's not really going to be taking many shots, but he's going to have a high impact everywhere else on the floor. I commend him for that. And I do think that it's going to be a positive for the Knicks. I think that it's going to result in a lot of winning. So far it has. I know it's just the preseason, and 2 of these games have been against the Hornets and the Wizards. So we can't really draw many conclusions, of course, just yet. But from what I am seeing, I do think that this starting 5 is going to work. I think it's going to be very fun to watch, and I'm really excited for it. Now, the other things I want to mention in this game real quick, the guys from the bench, Cameron Payne. I want to talk about him for a minute, because he has had a pretty solid preseason, actually. This is a guy that I honestly was pretty confident was going to get his spot overtaken by Tyler Kolek. And while I do think that's still a possibility in the future, I think Cameron Payne has kind of won that spot already at this point. I do. And as much as I want to see Kolek get that spot, and I have talked about it too, where I think Kolek can make an impact right away, I think Cameron Payne has earned the spot. I gotta tip my cap to him on that. He played really well tonight against Minnesota. He had 12 points in about 20 minutes, 5 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. He was making some plays offensively. He really was. He also had 3 assists as well. I mean, he's not, an amazing player, but this is a guy who is a veteran, a guy who's been around for a while, a guy with an established resume of success as well, because he was on those Phoenix Suns teams that were pretty good, and of course that one in 2022 that did make the 2021, that did make the NBA Finals. So, Yes, this is he has experience, and I think it'll serve a very good purpose with the Knicks, especially if Mikal Bridges is going to be running the second unit as well with these guys, because the bench is pretty depleted. So you're gonna have one of these starters carry a lot of load on the offensive side, especially with the bench unit. And I think Mikal Bridges is going to end up being that person. If that's going to be the case, then you have a lot of chemistry already there with Payne and Bridges, because those two guys were playing together in Phoenix and they were really well together. So I think it'll be a positive seeing him in the rotation. Of course, like I said, I like Tyler Kolek a lot, and I really want to see him be able to play. But I do think Cameron Payne has earned the right to play. I really think he's played his way into being one of the backup guards for the Knicks. And if that is the case, if I am right, and that he ends up being the primary backup guard on opening night, then I really hope he just performs well in his role and he does what we want him to do, which is just, provide some scoring, move the ball a little bit, all that good stuff, and everything, and the rest will come. So I'm really hoping for that. I'm excited of what's to come. I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far from him in the preseason, and yeah, we'll just go from there with it. Miles McBride, too, another guy who was very good tonight against Minnesota. He finished as a plus 13 with 12 points overall in 24 minutes. He only went 3 of 11 from the floor and 2 of 7 from 3, but the 2 threes he hit were huge threes in regards to the Knicks winning the game. But I think the fact that, he was a plus 13 despite that bad percentage, I think that should just show you right there just how impactful he actually is as a player. Miles McBride is somebody who I think we know he's a pretty aggressive scorer at this point. We know he's a guy who's, willing to make plays with the ball and willing to score, but we also know he's still developing a little bit. We know he's still trying to harness those playmaking skills a little bit, kind of improve in that area and stuff. I think the fact that he's able to still have an impact that well, despite the bad shooting, that's impressive. It is. It's very impressive. It goes to show you just how hard of a worker this guy is and how good of a player he is on both sides of the ball. This guy can really, of course, defend the perimeter very well, as we all know. So, again, very excited for year 4, I believe it's year 4 of Miles McBride, and I'm really looking forward to possibly him being the main sixth man. I know I was just mentioning Cameron Payne as, being like the backup guard, but I think we all know Miles McBride will almost certainly be the first guy off the bench every single game. So if he can, develop those playmaking skills a little bit more, and of course be efficient with the shots like he was last season, I think this guy can be a very solid sixth man for the Knicks. I really do. Landry Shamet as well. I want to get to him real quick. He actually had a pretty solid bounce back game after a pretty rough performance against Washington. Shamet had 13 points in about 22 minutes. He went 4 of 11 from the floor, 2 of 8 from 3. It's not the prettiest, I know, and 2 of 8 from 3 is not ideal from a guy that you're kind of just relying on shooting for if you're going to have him on the bench. So, of course, you want to see the three-pointers uptick a little bit. But I think it is important that he was able to make an impact scoring-wise. And, of course, he did have 2 steals and a block as well. So, showcasing a little bit of versatility in the defensive end. This is a guy who's not exactly known to be a good defender, but, hey, I'm all for it if he's going to be doing stuff like this. So, I wonder if he's going to make the rotation or not. Obviously, we're not sure just yet. He's still in that non-guaranteed deal, so it's not even a guarantee that he's going to make the rotation, nevertheless even make the team. So that'll be something to monitor the rest of the preseason. There's about 3 games left in the preseason, so I expect Shamet to see the floor a lot more throughout the final 3 games of this preseason and really kind of see if he's going to get that spot. I think that'll serve as his final official tryout, if you will, to really make a case to be on the active roster and get consistent minutes with the New York Knicks this season. So that'll be interesting to watch. But guys, I don't really have much else to say about this game. I mean, the only other storylines, of course, I mentioned was the Dante DiVincenzo stuff. Anthony Edwards did kill the Knicks, by the way. I wanted to mention that. That is one other thing. He had 31 points in 27 minutes and hit 8 3-pointers. I mean, the Knicks had no answer for him whatsoever. They did not. And that is a little alarming, considering that you got Bridges and Anunoby together for this kind of reason, to stop these guys from being able to do that. So that did raise my eyebrows a little bit, seeing him kind of light up the floor like that. But overall, I mean, at the end of the day, it is just the preseason. I'm not going to overlook it too much. Anthony Edwards is one of the rising stars of this league. He's on his way to being one of the best players in the NBA if he's not already there. So, sometimes guys just get hot. You got to tip your cap to them. Great game from him. Really, if it weren't for the minutes of the preseason, the Knicks might have lost this game with how well Edwards was shooting. I'm just being honest. They were trailing for most of this game. New York was down by as much as 11 at one point in this game. They didn't really get going until late in the third quarter, when guys like Edwards and DiVincenzo were off the floor and done for the night. That's just the preseason rotations, if you will. But Those guys played well. They really did their thing, and I think they kind of showed that the Knicks are not that while they're a very good team, they're not perfect yet. They still have to work out some kinks, especially on the defensive side, because this is now the second preseason game where they've kind of allowed a team to shoot really well from three. Again, I don't know if that's just the slower effort because of preseason or if it's because there's an actual issue there. But I do think it's something that they need to work on. I think it's something they can improve upon. Of course, these guys, we know what the Knicks are capable of defensively. I don't need to get into all that right now. We know that these guys are expected to be a juggernaut defensively and offensively, of course, but especially on the defensive side with Bridges and Anunoby there. So I think when the regular season rolls around, these guys have more practices together, more preseason games logged in together. I think we'll start to see some really, a lot more effectiveness on that side of the ball. So I'm looking forward to that. But guys, other than that, I don't have much to say about this game. DiVincenzo and the whole drama with Rick Brunson and of course with the Knicks bench in the early part of the game, that's been the biggest storyline of this game. I think it's clear that trade is still fresh in these guys' minds. This was of course the return for Julius Randle as well and a reunion for Towns as well against Minnesota. Didn't really see much of any signs of anything from Towns, but it's clear that DiVincenzo was very well thinking about that trade. It's pretty clear, even if he denies anything about what was said. It's pretty clear that it's still fresh in his mind, which is justifiable. The trade has not even been 2 weeks old yet, so I totally get it. It was pretty sudden for him, so we'll just see how that develops over the course of the season. I know at some point in the regular season the two teams do meet again at Madison Square Garden, so that's going to be an interesting one. And any other games they play against each other in the regular season, those are going to be ones that will be circled on the calendar and ones to really watch for, given what just happened tonight with DiVincenzo and the Knicks coaching staff. But other than that, guys, we really hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know what you think about this game in the comments section below, especially the Dante DiVincenzo stuff. And maybe we'll make a separate video about that just because of how juicy the storyline is, because it's definitely something worth talking about. So let us know what you guys say about all that stuff in the comment section below. I would love to hear from it, and so will the rest of us over at Fireside Knicks. You can also check out all of my articles over at EmpireSportsMedia.com. I wrote about the Knicks game tonight, and there's a bunch of other stuff I write about as well, so make sure you check all that stuff out. You can follow all of our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and of course this YouTube page that you were watching the video on. You can follow my personal Twitter account. It is right there on the screen, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of Fireside Knicks. Peace out.